My cheating ex-wife and her lover humiliated me in court for being a mechanic. But when the judge revealed what I was really hiding, all changed. Pret 1. I've been working as a mechanic for the past 10 years, starting right after finishing tech school. I worked at a well-known shop in town. Or I should say I used to work there. But more on that later. I've been fixing cars since I was 16, learning from my uncle in his garage. After tech school, I got my certifications and everything. Lots of people think being a mechanic is just changing oil and stuff. But there's way more to it. These days, cars are basically computers on wheels, and you have to know your stuff. It's honest work, it pays the bills, and most importantly, I love it. I met Sarah C., not her real name, obviously about 7 years ago when she brought her car in for repairs. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs from that first day. She kept going on about how her car was premium and needed special attention. I remember thinking she was kinda stuck up, but man, when she smiled at me, I forgot all about that. She worked at a fancy marketing company downtown, always wearing expensive suits and carrying designer bags I couldn't even pronounce the names of. I'm not going to lie. At first, I felt pretty lucky that someone like her would even look at someone like me. I was making good money. But I still came home every day with grease under my nails, you know. We started dating, and things were actually pretty good at first. She seemed interested in what I did, asking questions about cars and stuff. Sometimes she'd bring lunch to the shop, and my co-workers would joke about how I managed to land such a classy girlfriend. Yay. I thought she was different from the typical corporate type who looks down on blue-collar workers. Despite our differences, I thought we had something special. She used to tell me how much she admired my work ethic, and how she loved that I followed my passion. After about 2 years of dating, we got married. We had a decent-sized wedding that her parents mostly paid for, though I pitched in what I could. Her dad seemed okay with me at first. He's a big-shot real estate developer, but he acted like he respected that I worked with my hands. That's probably why he agreed to sign the loan for my house. Yeah, I bought the house before we got married. I had been saving up for years, living in a tiny apartment, putting away every extra dollar I made from side jobs. The house wasn't anything fancy, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, decent yard. But it was in a good neighborhood, and I was proud that I could afford it. Her dad signing helped me get a better interest rate, but I made every single payment myself. Never missing one. Sarah acted excited about the house at first, talking about how we could fix it up together and make it our own. But then she started making these little comments. When her co-workers would come over, which wasn't often, she'd say stuff like, "We're planning to move to a better neighborhood soon." Or, "This is just our starter home." It made me feel like what I'd worked so hard for wasn't good enough. I noticed pretty quickly that she didn't like telling people what I did for a living. At her office parties, when she'd actually bring me, she'd introduce me as a small business owner in the automotive industry. I mean, technically that turned out to be true later. But back then, it felt like she was embarrassed to just say I was a mechanic. My sister Jenny saw through Sarah from the beginning. She'd come by the shop, sometimes to have her car checked out, and she told me once, "I don't trust the way she looks at you. Like you're some project she's working on." I brushed it off because, sisters can be like that sometimes. Always thinking no one's good enough for their brother. The first year of marriage was okay, I guess. We had our routines. I'd work at the shop from 7 in the morning to 6 in the evening, sometimes later if we had a complicated job. Sarah worked from 9 to 5, but usually stayed late for client meetings, or team building events. I should have paid more attention to those late nights, but I was busy taking business classes at the community college. I didn't tell her about those because she always made fun of any suggestion I had about proving myself. That didn't involve leaving the auto shop. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs, the way she'd wrinkle her nose when I came home with grease stains on my clothes, how she stopped hanging out in the garage when I was working on my project car, the constant suggestions about going back to school to get a career. But you know what they say about hindsight, and all that. Things really started going sideways about 2 years into our marriage. Sarah got promoted at her marketing firm, and that's when she became absolutely unbearable. She'd come home talking about these fancy client dinners and office events, always mentioning this guy, Mark, who helped her so much with the promotion. I remember one night specifically. She came home super late, like 11 at night, wearing a new dress I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she said the office had an emergency client meeting, and she had to go shopping for appropriate clothes. It made me feel like an idiot for even asking. That's around the time she started making weird comments about the house. My father-in-law, remember he signed the loan, would come over for dinner, and they'd talk about property values and how I was holding Sarah back by not wanting to move to a fancier neighborhood. Right in front of me at our dinner table. She'd just sit there, nodding along, while he talked about how his signature on the loan meant he had some say in what happened to the place. The worst part was how she started treating my job. One time, a rich client brought in his Ferrari for repairs. Most shops in town wouldn't touch it, but I've got certifications for luxury cars. Sarah actually told her friends I was playing around with expensive toys instead of focusing on a real career. Meanwhile, I was making bank on those specialty repairs. But she never bothered to ask about that part. I used to laugh it off, but then it started to bother me. Then came the work parties. Man, those were rough. There was this one event, a fancy Christmas party at an expensive hotel downtown. I spent good money on a nice suit so I'd fit in with her crowd. The whole night. She kept leaving me alone while she hung out with her work friends. Her office crowd was something else. All these guys in expensive suits, talking about their investment portfolios and vacation homes. One dude actually asked me if I knew any reliable mechanics right after Sarah introduced me as her husband. She just laughed it off while I stood there feeling like a complete outsider. The distance between us only grew after that party. We used to at least eat dinner together most nights. But now she was working late. More and more. When she was home, she seemed distracted, always checking her phone or laptop. I tried suggesting date nights or weekend trips like we used to do. But there was always some work emergency or client meeting that got in the way. I started noticing she was texting constantly, always keeping her phone face down, walking out of rooms to take calls. Classic stuff, right? But I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid.